Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 meeting of the City of Cupertino Planning Commission. This will be a teleconference meeting in accordance with Government Code 54953 without a physical location to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Okay, may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Kapil?
Yeah, present.
Try this.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes. Try it next time because that's going to be something that I want to.
Commissioner Wong? Vice Chair Maripatla? Chair Sharf?
Present. So we do have a quorum with Commissioner Wong and Manipatla absent. And our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the February 22nd meeting. However, I think we're going to have to put this off to the next meeting since we're missing two of the people that would have to vote on this. Is that true, or do we have enough people to vote on this?
I believe you have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum of people that were at the last meeting. I don't think anybody was absent from the previous meeting. So if you all could take a minute to look at the draft minutes, and then we can, if someone can make a motion to approve the minutes, and I will look at them as well. It's very brief. We're only the study session, I believe, on the housing element. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Okay, I propose a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd meeting.
Okay, I'll second. So let's have a roll call vote.
I have a comment on it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
In the minutes, actually, one item I thought we discussed related to identified goal was to minimize upzoning.
No.
That is not there.
I'm hearing background noise. If everyone could mute themselves if they're not speaking.
Chair Sharf, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
That is in the minutes. It's incorporated at the top of page 3, I believe, of the draft minutes.
I'm talking about the points mentioned on page number, I believe, second to last. So that is, I don't see the page number mentioned in this, but what the heading is, the Planning Commission was asked to consider the identified goals for this housing element cycle and were asked to provide feedback and additional goals to determine a consolidated list. In this bullet points, one bullet which was I noted was present in the discussion was to minimize upzoning, which
Correct.
is missing here.
And that's in the next paragraph down.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if that's taken care of, let's have a roll call vote on approving the minutes.
Commissioner Kapil?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wong? Vice Chair Maripatla? Chair Sharf?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0-2.
Great. So now we are on to oral communications, and this is for people to speak on any item that's within our jurisdiction of the commission but is not on the agenda. You can speak for up to 3 minutes, and in most cases, state law will prohibit us from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. Of course, we can agenda, if it's an important thing, we can agendize it for the future. So you'll get 3 minutes, and raise your hand before the first person is finished talking, the same procedure that Mayor Paul has done for city council meetings. And I see 2 hands raised. The first one is Lisa Warren. 1 second. I need to get my timer going. Okay, Lisa, I will allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me my right to talk.
I'm sorry, that was the wrong word to use.
And actually, thank you, Commissioner Capil, for obviously doing your homework beforehand and noting that you had some questions about the minutes, and I'm glad it was resolved. But I appreciate you doing that. So I'm trying to be part of the housing element conversation, which has been very difficult, and it should not be that difficult. It's difficult. It's difficult to follow what is or isn't going on. I believe that you, as Planning Commission, were slated to receive presentation related to the site selection 3 different times in the last 2 weeks. I note that tonight's agenda is void of that discussion as well, and that surprises me. I understand that the actual number that we need to be identified is less than 1/3 of the city's total RENA numbers, that being because of the units already allocated to Valpo and the Hamptons. Note that those are both on the east side, and it totals over 3,000 units. That being said, the count that we need to identify for the 6th cycle is much smaller than presented, and the public who was willing to participate in the mapping exercise was sort of being led down the wrong path, in my opinion, and still we have no information about any of that. I also understand that HCD correctly expects equitable disbursement of housing quantity and type throughout cities. I have questions about the value of the current mapping exercise available to the public and why that has not been moved past part 1 into part 2. When they talked about it, it's just not there. And side note, continued note, still, I received 0 emails from that website notification system. And it's been talked about. It's actually come out finally, I believe finally, in public, that there is a glitch and no one's getting them. And there's supposed to be a workaround. And I swear to God, I think that was a month ago and still nothing. So I'm just putting it out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So Pew, can you comment on the residents' concern? Because I kind of share it.
Of course I may. I can. The sites inventory discussion was sidetracked a little bit because of the presentations that were necessary to be presented to the council, and in addition with the required subcommittee that was set up by the city council regarding the housing element. And so as a result, we need to have, that discussion will come back to the Planning Commission and the City Council. We just simply are not ready to have that discussion yet because we don't have a fully complete list to present to the Planning Commission to have that discussion. And with regard to the noticing, there isn't anything to notify the public about, updates to the housing element project itself at this time. And we do anticipate that there will be a subcommittee meeting shortly. And as soon as we have that scheduled, and there will be agendas and notifications sent out about that. It may not necessarily be through the Engage Cupertino website. There are contract issues and things that we need to work through, and those unfortunately do take a little bit of time to set up, and we're working our way through that. Okay. However, there have been notifications made through the Gov Delivery website, which has officially been the city's way of noticing the public.
Okay, and that will be a Brown Act committee, and it will be open to the public to participate in that. And of course, we welcome.
Correct.
Please we do definitely want people to participate. Very important. So next we have Jenny. Welcome, Jenny. You're unmuted.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you, head of the Planning Commission. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin. And, leading off of what Lisa had been talking about, I'm just going to make a couple of comments here. There was an audit run for the last year of the RENA numbers, HCD, the Plan Bay area. And this audit brought up some extremely difficult, very, very bad flaws in how the housing element is being rolled out by HCD, MTC, and ABAG. The numbers appear to be completely off. You'll hear it was basically bad statistical methods in the audit that they found. I think that they're going to have to go back when you have these massive statistical problems. You have to throw it out and go back to the beginning. And I mean, we have to go back to the beginning when Plan Bay Area methods were first adopted by, I believe, MTC and ABAG. I think it was over a year ago because there were people that complained about it. Where did they get, what statistical methods were they using? This is like a black box and it keeps getting worse. The magician pulls out rabbits and sticks and ducks, and we don't know what statisticians began the Plan Bay Area numbers. This is why you have audits, to find out where people went astray, when things went wrong. Nobody knows for sure, but the MTC numbers are, the RENA numbers are obviously wrong in whatever capacity. So, of course, as usual, the cities, the staff, the elected members, the public are the ones that are left holding the bag and having to essentially waste their time or not waste their time trying to deal with, it's like who was the guy that was pushing the rock up the hill? Edifice? I'm not sure. We are stuck with these bad numbers, and yet we have HCD yelling at the cities that they have to try to meet these numbers. It makes no sense. Therefore, we can't have anyone yelling at the city because it's an impossible task to push this rock up the hill. This rock came from HCD, ABAG, MTC, and they need to correct it or admit they did something wrong. The city is having to tote the line, but I really, really am very concerned that we are dragging massive statistical error along with us, and it's not a rock, it's a snowball, and it's getting worse. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. I'll mute you now. And we are on to written communications. Do we have any written communications?
I believe we have some written communications regarding the items on tonight's agenda.
Right, but not for the oral communications. Okay. Okay, we have no consent calendar, so we are on to public hearings. The first item, discussion of the Priority Development Area PDA planning grant funds awarded to the city by the Association of Bay Area Governments, MTC and MTC, for Heart of the City Specific Plan update. So may we have a staff report?
Certainly. It is my pleasure to introduce Erica Paveda, Associate Planner, who has actually been instrumental in applying for these grant funds and taking us so far. So, Erica, over to you.
All right, thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
All right, perfect. All right, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Erica Poveda, Associate Planner with Community Development Department, and tonight I'm here to present on the PDA Planning Grant Funds for the Heart of the City Specific Plan update. So as we all know, Planning Field loves to use acronyms. So in an effort to make this a little bit more user-friendly, we broke down some acronyms that will be most frequently used during this presentation. The HOC means Heart of the City. PDA stands for Priority Development Area. ABAG is the Association of Bay Area Governments. MTC is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. RENA is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, and VMT is Vehicle Miles Traveled. The Heart of the City specific plan was first adopted in 1995 with the purpose of guiding future developments in the special area. The HOC is considered the most important commercial corridor in the city and spans approximately 596 acres. As part of the 2019-2020 City Work Program, Council directed staff to amend the HOC specific plan to clarify setbacks on corner lots, review street tree requirements, update sections like transit corridors, and consider minimum retail percentage. Also in 2019, in response to a call for letters of interest and in anticipation of the sixth cycle housing element update, the city submitted a letter to ABAG and MTC confirming the intent to amend the HOC specific plan and conduct related rezoning and environmental studies by 2025. The PDA is an area with convenient public transit, and that is prioritized by jurisdictions for the development of housing, jobs, and services. The HOC is located in the VTA Corridors and Station Area PDA, which is the city's only PDA. Additionally, Plan Bay Area 2050 focuses new development in growth areas, particularly in PDAs, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to address regional housing needs. In January 2021, ABAG and MTC invited jurisdictions to submit applications for the PDA Planning Grant Program to support new and amended specific plans within PDAs. The primary goal of the PDA Planning Grant includes increasing housing supply and jobs, reducing VMT, increasing alternative modes of transportation, and retaining and expanding community assets, services, and retail. Consistent with the letter of confirmation that the city submitted to ABAG and MTC in 2019, staff applied in February 2021 for the PDA Planning Grant to amend the HOC specific plan. In spring 2021, Cupertino was awarded $400,000 through the PDA Planning Grant Program, and staff presented this grant to City Council last month. The City Council deferred its decision on the acceptance of the grant funding and requested that the item be presented to Planning Commission for its recommendation as to whether the city should accept the funding, as well as whether the city should partner with EMC Planning Group to conduct the HOC specific plan in conjunction with the housing element update, or to issue a request for proposal for a new consultant. ABAG and MTC will allow the city until the end of April 2022 to sign the funding agreement for the PDA Planning Grant. Therefore, Council's action on this item must occur before April 30th, 2022. The draft scope of work was prepared to comply with ABAG's and MTC's grant guidance, which was attached to the staff report, and outlines tasks related to public engagement, community assessment and policy development, and adopted plan documents. And more details for the scope of work can be found in both the staff report and the attachments. It's also important to note that in order to use the grant funds, the specific plan update must meet all deliverables outlined in the scope of work, including all assessments and analysis, as well as establishing a community advisory council and technical advisory committee. The required Community Advisory Council, or CAC, would be a representative group of residents, local employees, community-based organizations, service providers, and other involved members in the special plan area. The role of the CAC is limited to reviewing draft plan materials and informing the planning process through their community experience. The Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, would be a representative group of local, county, and regional agencies and service providers, like transit agencies, and air and water quality management districts, as well as the ABAG and MTC grant manager. The role of the TAC is limited to reviewing draft materials and providing detailed technical input throughout the planning process. Now, it's important to note that neither the CAC or the TAC will act as advisory or decision-making body for the HOC specific plan update. It's also anticipated that the specific plan might need updates related to the housing element update to accommodate some of the city's RENA. It is also anticipated that there may be some priority sites along the heart of the city transit corridor, in keeping with the state's requirements for meeting greenhouse gas targets and the city's obligation to meet GHG emission goals under SB 375. And while the current housing element update and HOC specific plan update are separate efforts, both are expected to run along parallel tracks. In finding a consultant, we feel that there are two options. Option one is to issue a new request for proposals for the work. Option two is to work with the existing housing element update consultant, EMC Planning Group. Staff recommends the second option due to the fact that there's much overlap in the scope of work for both efforts, including public engagement, analysis, rezoning, and required environmental studies. Additionally, some funds have already been earmarked in the housing element consultant's budget for zoning related tasks in the heart of the city. Should we proceed with option two, all related work required in conjunction with the housing element is expected to be completed by January 31st, 2023. Any additional tasks beyond what is required by the housing element update are anticipated to be completed within 3 years of contract approval as required by ABAG and MTC. A draft schedule with tentative dates is provided in the staff report and scope of work. Staff recommends that Planning Commission consider the information and consider whether to adopt the draft resolution recommending that City Council accept the PDA planning grant funds, initiate the HOC specific plan update in conjunction with the 6th cycle housing element update, and award a revised consultant agreement to EMC to incorporate the HOC specific plan update into the contract scope of work for the 6th cycle housing element update. Staff anticipates returning to Council on April 19th to present Planning Commission's recommendations. And staff is available for questions and look forward to your comments and direction.
Great, thank you. So I think you may have answered this. If we accept this grant, when do we have to use the money by, and when do we have to do the Heart of the City update by?
So all work related to the scope of work would need to be completed within 3 years of contract approval. So within 3 years from end of April.
Okay, and we're not required to use EMC, right?
No.
Okay. Yeah, my concern is, and we've seen this already in the oral communications comments, is that the planning department and EMC seem to be overwhelmed with the task of creating the housing element. I would not want to give either of them more work at this time. And there's definite issues with doing them simultaneously. A lot of the housing element sites that would be for affirmatively furthering fair housing would fall outside of the PDA, and we don't want to get stuck having to put more housing in areas that would cause our housing element to be rejected by HCD. I was at the Planning Commissioner Academy last week, and a lot of these Southern California cities that are 2 years ahead of us in the housing element cycles, they're getting their housing elements rejected, even though they're meeting all their numbers because of affirmatively furthering fair housing. So I don't oppose taking this grant, but I would not favor doing it concurrent with the housing element or using EMC. They just have too much work. And let me see if anyone...
But Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, but before we have a discussion of this item, do you want to take public comment?
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to go to public comment right now. We have one hand raised. Welcome, Jenny. Oh, now I see three. Oh, there's okay, four hands raised. Okay. So
Thank
please
you.
raise your hand before Jenny finishes speaking, and
Thank
I
you.
will start the timer.
Thank you, Chair Scharf. Yes, let me commend the city and the staff in 2019 as possibly looking to take this grant. It looks like an attractive offer. Unfortunately, we did not know then in 2019 that ABAG and HCD and MTC would be such incredibly bad actors. They have done some things in the last 2 years that are reprehensible, and which causes a lot of the public to question any of the methods that they are using, because I can say right now, I think HCD is being very, very abusive to the cities over the housing elements. And as the chair had mentioned about what was happening in Southern California with their housing elements, they are just being reamed by HCD for no reason. So I think that this grant does sound attractive, but to me, it comes with too many strings. I don't really like the fact that we're supposed to have a CAC and a TAC committee, which is something I guess that MTC and ABAG say that we have to have. Who are these people and why are they making decisions about our heart of the city? I have a lot of years of my personal life tied up in heart of the city, and believe me, I am not ready to deliver it to anyone else unless the city goes through it. Heart of the city has nothing to do with the housing element, and as far from what I have seen, the way that HCD and MTC and ABAG and a lot of other groups are really, really grabby about heart of the city. Heart of the city is something that is particular to Cupertino, and there are a lot of other people outside of this city who do not like the fact that Cupertino has a heart of the city. I am not willing to surrender heart of the city to anyone. I have years of my life and time committed to that, and I am not going to go back on that. If other cities and agencies and parts of the state don't like it, that's their problem. So I don't think we should take this grant. We've got Apple. We have people that can donate money to help us. $400,000, I hate to say, is a drop in the bucket in amount of money and funding that is available to Cupertino if they ask for it properly. I just think that this grant comes with too many strings and too many fingers that are too grabby to try to rezone the heart of the city. I don't want to go through another
15
one of
seconds.
here's a committee and all these people from outside of the city, and they're telling us how we're supposed to rezone heart of the city. That's what's happening with the housing element. So let's don't do that. Let's just not take it and do something ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Next, we have Abdullah Muhammad. Apologize if I didn't get your name right. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Abdullah Muhammad, and I'm gonna make this relatively short, but I'm a lifelong Cupertino resident, a high school student, and a lifelong resident of below market rate housing. And I would just like to say that growing up low income in an area as unique as the Bay Area, I've seen firsthand the inequities and inequalities of our housing crisis, which have only been exacerbated over the last few years with current legislation only going in the wrong direction. And I've constantly seen housing be pushed away, ignored, left to the side, which only puts our most vulnerable residents at risk. So I'm asking our commission to finally put all residents first, no matter their socioeconomic background, and hope that the commission accepts and recommends the grant to the council and furthermore pushes for more housing in the heart of our city, as it is the most equitable, fiscally responsible, and culturally needed step forward for our residents. And I would also like to add, as a lifelong resident of our city who has attended our public schools, works in our city, visits and thrives on our small businesses, I understand that Cupertino has so much potential and so much culture that we cannot let go, and that we can to not accept this grant at this moment because it will take too much work or because it's a drop in the bucket is not what we need right now. And we have a very, very extensive housing crisis, which requires immediate attention, especially from experts across the state and region. And then I guess before I leave, I want to note that today I've heard some of my neighbors, and I've heard some of my neighbors, not only in this meeting, but before this meeting, urged to not accept this grant. But I would just like to say that we cannot go down this same exclusionary, racist, and classist path against housing, and we just require immediate action.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Jean Bador. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and Planning Commission members. My name is Jean Badord, and I am a longtime Cupertino resident. I am here to urge you to recommend approval of this planning grant from ABAG MTC to offset city costs for this housing element cycle. It's for $400,000, nearly $500,000 that would otherwise come out of the city's general fund. First of all, changes to the heart of the city's specific plan and rezoning will be required in the process of adopting the housing element. After all, it dates back to 1995, and this is 2022, over 25 years when there have been many, many changes in Cupertino. The only question is who pays for these? General funds from the city or an offsetting grant. Secondly, ABAG MTC recognized that cities will incur additional expenses, so has made these grants available. So why would a fiscally responsible city reject grants such as these? Thirdly, funding needs to be locked up. As we all know, in the funding world, there's no guarantee of future grants. I urge you to be fiscally responsible and recommend approval of this grant. As a resident, I'd rather have $500,000 in city general funds used to fund park projects or the community shuffle, not outside planning consultants just to meet state requirements, not local needs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Next and last, we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So I have to say, the second speaker here, I felt messages were confusing to me or mixed. I understood some of it. I think it got lost on me, which is maybe on me, but and I hadn't planned on saying this because it doesn't sound right coming from me, how I feel about finances, but really, $400,000 just to accept it with a goal that is not ready to be tackled. And why are we just now hearing when there was, it's unclear who applied for this grant. I've heard before it was Pew, and previously it feels like something was hinted that it was Erica. I'm seeing a document that says in 2019 it was Ben. It's just hard to follow what even happened and why it's taken so long for staff to bring this forth to Planning Commission and City Council. So I wouldn't be in a big hurry to take any amount of money if it's not being used the way we need to or when we need to. So I ask that you do not recommend the City Council that any portion of the draft resolution at this time. In fact, I prefer that you recommend against the 3 listed actions in the draft. And this is why, mostly why, the housing element should be priority 1. Well, I just heard from staff that there are contract issues, which to me sounded like contract issues with EMC about getting these websites set up so they properly push out information to residents who want it. If that's the case, why would we consider adding to their tasks? They, in my opinion, aren't performing now. And why muddle the waters and give them control over something when we get improper feedback from them when it's most needed? we could be in big trouble with HCD if we don't get this housing element right. And I agree with you, Chair Scharf, with, I believe, all the statements you made initially. It's not appropriate with what's going on currently. So neither the city nor the outside consultant should be tackling Heart of the City or any related grant proposal at this time, because the focus needs to be on the housing element. And until there's a successful plan in place for the housing
10
element
seconds.
that would make HCD and others happy, we have no business moving forward with Heart of the City. We don't even know where we're going to put housing. How do you know where you need transit?
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So I do, City Clerk, did we get a written communication that needs to be read?
I can help answer that. Yes, we did receive one comment from a resident that asked us to read an email at the meeting. I am going to pull that up right now. Just a second.
Okay.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Syra. Dear Planning Commissioners and staff, I do not think the city should accept this PDA planning grant for the following reasons. Our immediate need, focus on and complete our housing element by January 2023. Do not confuse people by adding the HOC. Focus on site selection. Needs to cover the entire city, not just one area. We need to bring transportation to areas of the city that are underserved. Schools are one community asset that are required to be considered, and most are located outside the HOC area. Loss of local schools impacts traffic elsewhere, decreases walking and biking opportunities, decreases access to parks and possible access to emergency response. ARCs are located on school property. Equitable access and distribution of produce markets, grocery stores, etc. are critical to ensuring our entire city thrives and grows. We must reduce our areas of inequity. The EMC group already has a very full agenda. Don't overload them. They're already behind schedule. Adding additional requirements will not improve this. Planning Commission meeting on site selection has been canceled 2 times already. Notifications have not been going out as expected. Our planning staff already are overworked. Limited city staff. Our staff has mentioned multiple times that they're stretched thin, continually hiring new planning staff. Give them time to become familiar with our city, its specific plans and zoning. Staff's time has already been spent meeting with an ABAG MTC grant manager to prepare Attachment 3 PDA planning grant draft scope of work when it could have been focused on our housing element. It probably also involved the EMC group's time. The real cost of missing or producing an inadequate housing element is complete loss of local control. This is a much higher price to pay. The city's application for this grant specified starting the HOC specific plan in June 2024 and completing it in December 2025. Accepting this grant would force the city to begin now, April 30th, 2022, over 2 years earlier than the staff planned. This is not what the staff planned. Opportunities for future funding. As the staff wisely stated in their staff report, page 6 of 9, last bullet, if the city does not accept this grant, it will continue to be eligible to apply for grant funding in a new funding cycle. As stated in Attachment 4, PDA Planning Grant Guidance Document, documents produced previously for our housing element could be used as part of satisfying a new grant. Work effort. Many of the guidelines and suggestions in Attachment 4, PDA Planning Grant Guidance, can be used to help the city complete its housing element without being tied to additional requirements for the grant. Request, please recommend to the City Council that they do not accept the PDA planning grant at this time. Sincerely, Peggy Griffin.
Okay, thank you, Pew.
Chair Sharp,
Yeah.
if I may, I did want to respond to 3 comments that came up in the public communication, if I may.
Go.
Who applied for the planning grant? It was planning staff, regardless of who signed the actual grant application. It came as a result of the letter of support that was submitted back in June 2019, I believe, when the city said that they would consider amending the HOC PDA, and that was why staff applied for the PDA grant funds. With regard to the contract issues are not related to EMC. I wanted to be clear about that. The contract issues are related to a third-party vendor that needs to, the contract with whom needs to be amended. And then with regard to, I'm sorry, there was actually a point I wanted to address on Ms. Griffin's attachment. Let's see.
Would you like me to share my screen again?
No, I have it here. I just wanted
Okay.
to. This, with regard to, yes, the grant would force the city to begin in April 2022, is what the email from Ms. Griffin stated. The acceptance of these grant funds do not require the city to start the process or the work in April 2022. We could still, we still have 3 years from when we enter into a contract to spend the funds. So I did want to point that out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that's very important point. So we can now bring this back to the commission. Go back to the panelists. So Sanjeev, go ahead. You need to unmute though.
Yeah, actually, my understanding of this proposal is that there is a 10-year worth of master funding program associated with this. That means that that is not master funding program. If you accept this grant, you will be entered into that master funding program. And I have no clue based on the PDF attached that what that master funding program is all about. So definitely there is a lack of clarification in the write-up, which was forwarded related to this. Second thing is that unless it is about vehicle miles traveled, that point is well taken, because if it is a corridor which is associated with a lot of offices and workplaces, maybe it becomes a walking distance and maybe it becomes a VTA related. That part is true, but greenhouse gas emission piece is not understood, because greenhouse is not only related with the vehicles, it is also related with the density. So that part is also kind of very unclear, that how greenhouse gas emission will be reduced, because we want to increase the density in the main corridor. These are my comments. I would recommend not to take this grant. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Vikram, go ahead.
Some questions. The initial grant, I think Piyush sort of answered it, was by the staff. But was that discussed with this planning commission or the city council, that whether we should apply for this grant or not?
And there was no item on the agenda with regard to whether we should apply for the grant or not. There were no requirements to have that discussion. We've been encouraged to apply for grants in the past. There have been certain, overall direction that we've received. And so as a result of that, we did apply for the grants.
Okay, thank you. I think the second question I had is that suppose there was no grant, was this item prioritized by the city council in the past at all, that, okay, we need to redo this? And has this been sort of put on the work item before?
Yes, so the HOC was a work program item, and Erica, remind me, it was probably from 2017 that updating the HOC for certain aspects has been on the city's work program in the past.
Okay.
And so that this money could be utilized to do that work as well. Okay. And in addition, as Erica mentioned, they're not necessary that all the housing element sites would go in the heart of the city area, but it is quite possible that it might be 1 or 2 sites that could be in a housing priority area. And as a result, some of the housing element money, contract money, could be replenished from these grant funds.
Okay. So you mentioned this was on the work program till 2017. So what's the progress been made since in those 5 years?
It just has not been prioritized because of staffing challenges and, in terms of just the work that was associated with it. But since we had a consultant, since there might be some sites that would go on this, staff actually is bringing that item as a recommendation for the Planning Commission and Council to consider.
Okay. So when the city council sort of prioritized the work items, this was not high enough in the cut to get funded.
It kind of came off after a few years in terms of priorities. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think thank you for setting that context because this explains, why it is here and what it is here and why you explained private land. Um, so given all that is happening in the city with the housing element and the study, I also tend to believe that probably we're not ready for this right now. Um, uh, I mean, ideally, if you're applying for a grant, it should be something which is prioritized high by the city, which pushes it forward, not something which we are doing because somebody is giving us money. So I tend to agree with what Commissioner Kapil said, that probably this is not the right time for us to do this. I do realize that 400,000 is a lot of money, but I think given the bigger scheme of things where billions of dollars of real estate is going to get built in Cupertino. I think we can probably take that hit just to make sure we proceed in a more systematic manner, which is aligned with what the city council desires. That's my view. Thank you. Commissioner Vice Chair Sharp, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will go now. So my
Sure.
feelings.
I'm sorry to interrupt, if I may.
Oh, did you want to respond?
No, we did get an email from somebody, and it was sent at least 11 minutes ago when the public hearing comment period was opened. I just wanted to check with you to see if you wish to.
Well, yeah, I got that, but it was after the first person finished speaking.
Okay.
So yeah, we won't read that in there. So my feeling on this, I'm mixed. I don't support doing a Heart of the City update concurrent with the housing element. I think that's a bad idea for multiple reasons. It became even more of a bad idea after I was at this Planning Commissioner Academy and consulted with some of my colleagues from Southern California. We really don't we don't want to do anything that would mandate us putting more housing in the heart of the city when this AFFH, affirmatively furthering fair housing, these other cities got hit by this because they were doing what we're doing, putting all the housing in one place and not putting it in the neighborhoods that are higher resource. And so I'm concerned about that, especially, they're getting their housing elements rejected right and left. And the legislative analyst for California League of Cities, he's saying, well, yes, they are, but HCD can't sue every city in California. But I don't know if that's a good reason to do something that would cause us to get rejected too. We really have to craft a housing element that passes muster with HCD. And I understand, the state auditor report was a big topic of conversation at the Planning Commissioner Academy, but it's really not going to affect the sixth RENA cycle at this time. They're not going to go back and redo all the numbers, despite what the auditor found. However, it seems like taking this money, and as long as we do the HOC update by 2025, it doesn't have to be concurrent with the housing element, and it doesn't have to be done by EMC. Is that true, Pew?
That is correct.
I saw on an earlier slide that the city committed to ABAG that we would do an HOC update by 2025. Did I read that right?
There was a call for interest from ABAG and MTC back in, I believe it was 2019. And at that time, that call for interest letter was sent in by the city for its PDA in anticipation of the sixth cycle housing element.
Okay.
And so as a result, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't bind the city into doing anything, but it did allow us to apply for those grant funds.
Okay, very good. And I know one of my fellow commissioners mentioned transit and greenhouse gas. That was also a big topic at the Planning Commissioner Academy and in another meeting I had on Sunday. And it was interesting because what was really driving up the cost of housing according to a building industry executive, was the change to VMT. I didn't realize this at the time, but there's actually fees that developers pay when they build housing that has a high VMT. But that's the kind of housing that's been in demand. So I don't know if we want to be encouraging more housing in areas where we don't have the demand for housing. I know VTA has no plans for high quality transit up the Stevens Creek corridor. Despite the BRT line, we're not planning any Elon Musk boring tunnel or a monorail or anything like that. That's not happening. And again, in the short term, we need EMC and the planning staff to concentrate on the housing element and not get distracted with doing a heart of the city update at the same time. So personally, I would favor taking this money, but not tying it to doing an HOC update at the same time as the housing element. And I would also have reservations of giving this contract to EMC as part of their housing element update. But I do agree, we definitely need to revisit the heart of the city in the future. And, given the changes in work and housing and transit, we really need an update on this. So I think, I can call for a motion here. Let's see, do we need, city attorney, do we need a motion here, or do we just, take a vote on the recommended action? I don't know. It doesn't sound like we need a vote on this. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I think it depends on what action you want to propose to the council, because currently the action is to both accept the grant as well as award to EMC. If you want something that's hybrid, then you can make that motion.
Okay, yeah. So I would not follow the recommended action here, but okay, so I will try to craft a motion on the fly. I would motion that we accept the award, the PDA planning grant funds, but that we do not update the heart of the city until after the housing element is complete and approved by HCD. I won't say anything about what consultant should get it, because by that time, maybe EMC does make a good proposal. So let's not exclude anyone. So that'll be the motion, to accept the award, but do not initiate the HOC specific plan until after the housing element has been completed and approved and accepted by HCD.
Shall we start discussion on this?
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to check with the staff whether that's something which would work, because I think this is something which agrees with the principles I had about not forcing something on the city when we're already knee-deep in something else. So would that work? Would that be something acceptable to the grant allocator, or where we're getting the grant from?
Yeah, I would say as long as we meet all deliverables as identified in the scope of work within 3 years. So that would be approximately April 2025. That is what ABAG and MTC require.
Okay. So, so it would be okay that we work on the housing element and then start on that only when that is finalized, as long as we can do that. And also, could you shed a little bit more about the deliverables, like what the deliverables are?
Yes, so that was actually included as an attachment to the scope of work. It is attachment 3, I believe. And it's sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So this is, you can see it. This is the draft scope of work. It does have several different tasks, namely public engagement. And this is where, let me zoom in a little bit. This is where the Community Advisory Council and Technical Advisory Committee would fall under. in addition to public engagement, so we have several meetings that would be deliverable under that task. And to go into it in more depth, I invite you to look through the packet. And then second task would be community assessment and policy development. So this would incorporate several different assessments that would, we do see overlap with the housing element update, namely for this task as well as the engagement task. But as it shows here, several different assessments and seeing how they would interact with the heart of the city specific plan. And then lastly, task 3 would be adopted plan documents. So looking at the specific plan updates as well as environmental impact reports, which again does overlap with the housing element update. And then lastly, the plan adoption and associated zoning and general plan amendments.
Okay. Thank you for walking us through the process which has to be followed and the final deliverables. I think this is going to be a pretty big thing, and I'm not sure whether we'll be able to accommodate it by the deadlines appointed, assuming we started after the housing element is done. Chair Sharp, Vice Chair Sharp, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So when is the housing element completed? And is that in 2023 the HCD would accept or reject it? Or is it
That
this
is our
year?
hope and goal, yes.
Okay. So then that would give us only 2 years to update Heart of the City following that.
Yeah, and also there might be more iterations with the HCD also, given what other cities are rating, that we might propose something, they might come back to us, change this. So 2023 is the earliest we can probably get it done. So, yeah.
Right.
My thinking is that you have the opportunity to for this fund later in time also. So when it becomes your housing element becomes clear, at that point you can still apply for this and get going with it. Tying your hands right now with this fund and without knowing what it entails in terms of details is probably going to bite in the near future. So if this we can apply for this in 2033, why not do that at that point, where by that time you will have a housing element update available to you and much more clearer picture what it will entail.
So, I mean, let's hear from Pew. I mean, is that enough time to do something like an HOC update if we started in 2023?
I think a 2-year timeline might be adequate for a specific plan update. It's not a very large, update, particularly if we're going to wait until after the housing element. I do want to caution that if we were to try, there might be another funding cycle in a few years, but if there are not many sites in the heart of the city for, consideration, it would not, the scope of work would not align with ABAG and MTC's goal, which is to increase housing and jobs and connect VMT, et cetera, which they, the conventional thinking is that where there is transit, if you put housing there, the greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, go down. So that linkage is kind of lost a little bit. However, with that said, in general, 2 years might be adequate to do that update.
Right, but do they consider all the pipeline units that are going to be in our 6th cycle?
So the goal is also to consider the rezoning. I don't think they want to only pay for, clarifications to side yard setbacks or, pollinator pathways or, things that might be in the city's interest other than just, upzoning. I did want to caution that. So we may not necessarily be competitive enough for them in order to qualify for the grant.
You mean if we reapplied?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's the city council that decides this. We're just making a recommendation. So, I would stick with my recommendation that we accept the money, but don't start the HOC update until after the housing element is completed, and the city council at their meeting, they can decide whether or not it makes sense given the timelines to proceed. So that, yeah, that would still be my motion, accept the grant money, and we recommend to the council that we accept it and start the HOC update after the housing element is complete, and the city council can decide whether or not that the timeline makes sense.
No, I guess one question is that what if we go ahead and accept this, but then are not able to deliver in time?
Yeah, do we have to give the money back, I presume?
These are all reimbursement funds, so unless there are deliverables, you will not get reimbursed for it, essentially.
Okay. Right. Yeah, because I think what I don't want is that at the end, 2 years from now, we are rushing through this thing because we're going to lose the funds. Okay. And does it allow for extensions? Can cities apply for extensions as part of the grant?
I do not believe there are any extensions. However, I do believe that 400,000. Again, we thought the 400,000 in conjunction with the housing element would be adequate for this specific plan update, as because there's some tasks that there would be overlap in the tasks. If it were done by itself, as suggested, it may cost more than 400,000.
Yeah.
In which case, we'd front load the reimbursements on the 400,000 with ABAG MTC, and then the city would have to backfill the rest of the funds.
Okay. But the reimbursements won't come till everything is completed, right?
No, it's based on deliverables. So if the consultant invoices us 20,000 for the month of, let's say, February 2025, then that's what we get paid for. But any invoices after April 2025 would not be paid by ABAG.
Okay. So
there is one other thing is that if you accept this grant, what is the what you are tying yourself into? What is the master funding program is associated with it? Means that you have taken the funding from them, and then do you have to follow the subsequent any guidelines from them in order to proceed on it, or what is the 10-year funding cycle?
So that's an excellent question. There are actually two pieces to it. And Erica, do you want to explain that a little bit? The difference between the master funding agreement and the first addendum?
Sure. So we do have, so with ABAG and MTC, with any funds that are granted to the city, not just for planning related efforts, but for any division within the city, ABAG and MTC is requesting a master funding agreement. And this is, you could think of it more as just an umbrella contract. And we have had our attorneys take an initial look at it. So I'm sure if you have questions about the details of it, perhaps Michael, you could jump in if I'm missing anything. But this is just an initial umbrella contract to kind of start the funding relationship between the city and ABAG and MTC. Subsequently, any funding, specific funding sources, in this case, the PDA planning grant, will require what's called a supplemental attachment. And the supplemental attachment is primarily the scope of work. So the scope of work that was attached here, that is what deliverables we would be held to for this grant.
So if I can jump in, Commissioner Capito. So this is really just a delivery mechanism to facilitate providing grants for specific services. So what MTC, the model they've gone through, is to create what's called a master agreement that has all of the legal terms and conditions so that all of the legal counsel can review it, provide comments, and then negotiate that. And subsequent to that, anytime a new grant comes into play, then it's just a focus on the terms of that specific grant. And so all of the other general terms and conditions have already been negotiated. So it's just to facilitate for the parties to contract.
What I wanted to actually know was basically if you accept this initial 400,000 grant, does it bind you to the subsequent clauses in the master funding program, which you need to adhere to? Means that if you have accepted this and you have used that initial 400,000 for the purpose, and then you will have to follow through on the remaining clauses which the master funding program has. Is there something like that, a link between the two?
Michael, if you may, I mean, if I may, in terms of the master funding agreement, all it kind of states is, how is the city going to be reimbursed? It kind of, talks about the general terms of how the city will approach, will accept the money that comes from ABAG MTC. But the planning PDA grant funds, that's kind of nested under that master funding agreement. So unless we apply, once we get invoiced by our consultant for a certain amount of work, that's when we would apply to ABAG MTC to get reimbursed for that work. So it doesn't really tie us to anything. If we ultimately, at the end of 2020, let's say April 2025, we only got through 1/3 of the work that was required for this, we only get paid for 1/3 of that work. And then the city can choose to abandon that effort. But I don't believe it ties us to say that you have to finish this now. That is my understanding.
But I thought the funding was tied to deliverables.
Correct, it is.
But if the deliverables won't exist till the process ends.
So there are certain pieces that will exist. For example, let's say there is a retail assessment that's done. So there is some amount of money that is tied to that retail assessment. The consultant will invoice us for the work that they do in a certain month. And once we have that retail report completed, that's when we get paid for that amount.
Yeah. Erika, could we just again show the final section which talks about the documents which have to be generated? Because I think that the document actually had a lot of process issues of how we're going to do it. But there was a final section which talked about the actual deliverables. Could you just share that again?
For the scope of work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like there was a final section which you were scrolling through, which was about the deliverables.
Sure. So there are deliverables for each task.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have deliverables for the first task, which is community public
Yeah.
engagement.
No, I think most of these were around meetings and process that, okay, we have to have this meetings. At the end, there was a section on, okay, this is what will happen.
Okay. On the final documents.
Yeah. Most of these are meetings, right? So,
Yes,
okay.
and then task 3 is adopted plan documents. So these are the deliverables here.
Okay. So what we're saying is we don't have to get to these deliverables to get the funding. If even the intermediate tasks are fulfilled, we'll get reimbursed.
So if you go back up, Erica, so for example, if we did document research, that's a deliverable in this task. So we would get paid for that work. If there's an internal review meeting, they will pay for that work. Subsequent CAC meetings, they'll pay for that. If we get to the final, can you scroll down, Erica? If, for example, we don't get to an administrative draft or we don't get to the final specific plan, they won't pay for that particular piece.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Erica, can you correct me if I'm wrong?
No, you're correct.
Okay, cool. So, Vice Chair Shah, just to make it more clear. So what we are...
Chair.
Okay. What we're saying is, what you're proposing is that we accept the grants with the condition to the city council that we are not going to start work on this or even sign a contract with a firm or external consultant until the housing element is finalized and approved, right?
Right. I mean, they can start, evaluating consultants before the housing element's complete, but right, we wouldn't sign a contract until it's complete, right? As one resident pointed out, if we need to update HOC anyway, let's not give up this 400,000, if it makes sense to take it. And again, another resident said, yes, it's true, 400K, it's a lot of money, but it's not, not in the scheme of things, an enormous amount. We unfortunately, the city's, spent more money on, well, I don't want to go into it anyway. So that's my proposal. Recommend to the city council to accept the grant and start work on an update of the HOC once our 6th cycle housing element is complete and approved by HCD.
Yeah, I think the approved part is the critical part because we have seen pushback from HCD and I'm not sure where we are going to land up. So let's make it very explicit that it has to be approved before.
Right. I'm
Before
hopeful. I'm very hopeful that looking at why the housing elements were rejected in Southern California, that we can learn from their mistakes and not fall into the same trap. I'm crossing my fingers on that because now we have more data on what HCD is really looking for, which the cities in Southern California did not have. So it's actually good that they stagger this and that Northern California goes 2 years later.
Actually, the HOC update, HCD update, the way this is what I heard from Pew was that it's based on the deliverable. Use the scheduling of when we do those things. It's up to us, right? I mean, we don't have to condition it on something that how we will figure out what are the updates for the housing element cycle. We can schedule as and when we want, and based on that, we get funded, reimbursed.
Right. I mean, the reason I phrased it the way I did is because the recommendation on the agenda is different than what I propose to recommend to City Council. So I made the motion. It has not been seconded yet. Does anyone want to second it, that we accept the PDA funding, but we do not start the update to HOC until our housing element is complete and approved by HCD?
Okay. I think I would sort of clarify is that we don't start work on hiring the consultant till our housing element is approved. So make it very clear that when we say start, we mean even hiring the consultant and everything.
Okay, but I mean, what about evaluating consultants prior to hiring them?
I think evaluation by itself is already happening. The city has with many consultants.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
And it's not that we're going to suddenly have a brand new list of consultants. It's going to be from the people who have been.
So our recommended action to accept the awarded PDA planning grant funds and initiate the heart of the city specific plan update, including hiring a contractor only when our housing element is completed and approved by HCD.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes,
Okay.
I think that probably aligns with all the different.
Okay, so will you second it then?
Yes, I would second that.
Okay, so let's have a vote.
Commissioner Kapil,
Yeah, I will go with it based on the Pew's explanation.
Commissioner Saxena,
Yes.
Commissioner Wong, Vice Chair Matipatla, Chair Sharp.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0-2.
Great. Okay, we're on to item 3. Consider an appeal of the Director of Community Development's approval of a 2-story permit to allow a new 2,271 square foot 2-story home with a 561 square foot attached accessory dwelling unit, application number R2021-056. The applicant is Jackson Liu. The property owners are Chengju Liu and Caitlin Huang. And the appellant is Sharon Hall. The location is 18750 Barnhart Avenue, assessor parcel number 375-27042. So may we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you. Good evening again, Planning Commission. I would actually like to introduce one of our very new assistant planners with Cupertino, AJ Haas, and she will be presenting this item.
Great.
Good evening. I hope everyone's doing well. My name is AJ Haas, as Pew mentioned. I'm a new assistant planner here with the city. Tonight I'm going to be presenting the appeal of the director's approval of a 2-story permit at 18750 Barnhart Avenue, file number R-2021-056. The project site is in the Rancho Rinconada neighborhood. It is zoned R15 for single family residential use. surrounded by others R15 zone properties with a mix of single-story and two-story homes. Project consists of a two-story permit to allow for a 2,271 square foot two-story home with a 561 square foot attached ADU. The single-family residential ordinance requires two-story permits to undergo administrative review with a decision made by the Director of Community Development. The code also requires any appeals for those projects to be heard by Planning Commission followed by City Council. State law requires ministerial approval of accessory dwelling units up to 800 square feet regardless of site conditions. So the ADU is not going to be considered as a part of the appeal. For context, I'll give a brief overview of the project timeline. More details are available in the staff report. On November 29th, 2021, the applicant submitted an application for a proposed two-story residence with an attached ADU. Staff conducted a review of the proposed project and found it to be complete on December 5th, 2021. The required 2-week public comment period took place between December 9th and January 3rd. The 7 adjacent property owners were notified via mail and a site sign was posted. We received 1 comment during the comment period requesting clarification of a setback. We then received an additional comment from the appellant, Ms. Hall, after the end of the comment period on January 6th. The concerns included size and design of the project, privacy impacts on the second story, and concerns that the project would have severe adverse impacts on affordability in the neighborhood. Staff responded to each public comment and included a summary of comments and responses in the action letter dated February 4th. Although Ms. Hall's comments arrived after the end of the comment period, language was included in the action letter that acknowledged that we received the comments and we briefly addressed her concerns at that time. We then received an appeal of the director's decision during the appeal period on February 14th. Staff received an appeal from the resident at 18760 Barnard Avenue, so the neighboring property. The site of the proposed two-story home is shown in red here with the appellant's property shown in yellow. While there is detailed information in the staff report, the next slides summarize the basis of the appeal and staff's response. First basis of appeal is regarding the mass and bulk of the proposed residence. The appellant stated that the block is comprised primarily of single-story homes and that the lot coverage of the new two-story home would compromise the quality of living in the neighborhood. In response, staff conducted a review of the existing homes on Barnard Avenue near the subject property between Moretti Drive and Sterling Boulevard. Staff also performed a windshield survey of a portion of the Rancho Rinconada neighborhood. Both reviews indicate that the surrounding neighborhood is transitional and has a mix of both single-story and two-story residences. The figure here highlights the two-story residence in the immediate surrounding area near the subject property. Within the 0.3-mile stretch of Barnard Avenue that was surveyed, we found that 34.8% of the homes were two-story residences with an average floor area of approximately 2,600 square foot. The proposed 2,271 square foot two-story residence therefore seems comparable in size to the existing homes in the surrounding neighborhood.
Just to confirm, the yellow highlights are the two-story ones, right?
The yellow highlights are properties that are two-story on the same street.
All right, thank you.
It's important to note that this neighborhood does not have a single-story overlay. Therefore, the city cannot require the home to be limited to single-story in this neighborhood. Additionally, the project complies with all development regulations for R15 zone properties regarding mass and bulk, including the floor area ratio, first floor building envelope, setback regulations, and building height. Again, the proposed attached ADU is not being considered as part of this two-story permit, but it also complies with state laws and the city's ADU site development regulations. The second basis for appeal is the potential privacy impact. The appellant pointed out that there were reductions of previously established setbacks and usable rear yard. Additionally, there were concerns with replacing the single-story home with a two-story home. Staff noted that the project meets or exceeds all minimum setback requirements for the first and second floors. The applicant has proposed a first floor rear yard setback of 20 feet where 20 feet is required, second story rear yard setback of 25 feet where 25 is required, first floor side yard setbacks of greater than 5'5" where 5 feet is required, and second floor side yard setbacks of 15 feet and 17 feet where 15 is required. The applicant also proposed privacy mitigation measures. The R1 ordinance allows property owners the ability to construct second-story windows and balconies as long as privacy screening plantings are installed and maintained. The applicant has proposed to plant 4 Laurus nobilis, which is one of the city's approved privacy planting species. They're also proposing to maintain the existing 15-inch privet tree to screen the second-story windows along the rear property line. These privacy plantings will be considered protected trees and shall be protected and maintained by a recorded covenant against the property. As protected species, they are not permitted to be removed without obtaining a tree removal permit and providing replacement plantings. Privacy plantings for the right and left property lines were not required since the applicant has proposed all second-story windows facing side yards have a ceiling height above 5 feet. Again, a 2-story home appears to fit the neighborhood context. For reference, I'll show you again the homes on the block that are 2-story.
So do you know the lot size of those 2-story homes? Because those other lots appear to be larger, at least the one on the same block there to the left of 18750.
I don't know what the lot sizes are of each individual lot, but they are all zoned R15 as well. The appellant also had concerns with fire hazards caused by development near utility lines on the site. Staff had noted that the proposed project is free and clear of the existing public utility easement. The only proposed alterations within the easement area were landscaping modifications, which are not restricted in the easement area. The final point that we'll discuss that Ms. Hall raised in her appeal was that the proposed project does not conform to the spirit of maintaining affordable housing, and the applicant's parcel doesn't have sufficient space for the ADU to have its own private outdoor space. Staff had noted that the primary residence has an adequate amount of usable rear yard space per the R1 ordinance. State law allows property owners to encroach into a required rear yard for the purpose of constructing a second unit. As a reminder, the ADU is reviewed ministerially and will not be considered as a part of the discretionary permit. Staff has received a total of 10 letters from nearby property owners in support of the planned development. This map illustrates the 7 nearest property owners who provided letters of support. And per section 15303, class 3 of the California Environmental Quality Act, the project is considered categorically exempt from CEQA requirements. As such, the staff and the Director of Community Development have found the project to comply with all R1 ordinance requirements. We therefore recommend the City Council or the Planning Commission to adopt the proposed draft resolution to find the proposed actions are exempt from CEQA, deny the appeal to uphold the Director's decision approving the application, and then in addition, require the applicant provides existing natural grade for all height measurements, including building envelope and overall height on all building permit plans as a condition of approval.
Okay.
I'm available for questions. We also have the appellant and the applicant who might be able to assist.
Okay. I'll let the appellant speak first. Would the appellant like to speak? Sharon, you need to unmute yourself.
Chair Sharf, you may have to speak up for Sharon.
Oh, Sharon, if you could unmute yourself, you're welcome to speak.
Can we unmute her from here?
I can't. I have to ask her to unmute. I think.
Am I here?
Yes,
Yeah.
you're
Are you
there.
hearing
Welcome.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, this has been a very frustrating situation for me. We get our first notice about this project at the end of November, not just right after Thanksgiving. And at that point, okay, you prepare your little presentation, and I had to send it in by letter because you guys were all closed up. I mean, this project, and it goes on and on like this, short notice, and short notice. And then it's as if this has already been planned to be pushed through. So, you know, it's like hitting your head against the wall. Anyway, so I try to, you know, for me, I'm right next to this. I find that it is an unnecessarily large plan, you know, plan for the thing. So, and why I think that is that our neighborhood from Wonderlick on out to Starling is not full of large houses. The large houses are to the west of Wonderlick on Barnhart. And also there are no large houses that nobody presented this on the side, on the back side of this project. None on Pendergast. And they have very nice single-level homes. There's a nice single-level home going up next to me on the other side, and there's a nice single-level one on the other side there. I mean, it's very possible to put in a nice, moderate home. I feel this has just been pushed through so somebody can make a lot of money, and it's just been very frustrating to me that I can't find reasons. One thing I said was that apparently it used to be that you can take, you need to have an owner applicant for this type of projects. And this project has been a rental for years. And there is no owner applicant on this, and you know, it's just like very frustrating. So nobody recognizes these things, and also I do find that the setbacks that we currently have are better. These other ones are really, really tight in the back. And as for not having any reason for screening on the sides, I don't understand that one at all. It's our side by side people that are actually getting a whole lot of needing a whole lot of protection here, and there's no plan for doing a big screen on the sides, the east and the west. And as for zoning, most all of Rancho was zoned R5, and that meant 5,000 square foot backyards. This is, and the ones that we're on right now are the ones that I'm on, and the ones that is, you know, next to me that's being planned are both very, very small yards. They're very close to the 5,000 limit rather than the 6,000 limit. But, excuse me. And it's just like the structure just dwarfs the current neighborhood. So, well, I'm sure I could be better prepared. This has been very hard for me. But I am concerned about the light level coming from the new project. It's very bad to sleep in a very light. You know, you should be sleeping in nice dark spots, and I'm afraid of the light level here. And I at some point want to address the fencing between myself and the plant project, because they're planning to take it out and replace it with an interior fencing, and I need a sturdy, nice three rail fencing on that. The other thing that I think that they should be mandated to do, and there is things to say you should, is make sure that you recycle your things that you can. And I've seen people just come in there and just flatten the wood. That is, while it's old, it is excellent quality redwood siding. You know, like from old growth redwood.
Okay,
they should
try
take it.
to finish up in the next minute or so.
Okay. So I feel that they should make an effort to recycle that and reuse it. It's good quality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see two hands raised from the public. The first is Jenny Griffin. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Chair Sharp. We spent 5 years in Rancho attempting to annex into the city because of the monster houses that were being built. This was 1996 to 2000. When we got into the city, it took another 2 years, but they stopped the monster construction. This is basically a monster house that has come back again. It's 2,700 square feet on a 5,000 square foot lot. I was shocked to see that this was happening. Okay, now I understand about the ADU, but we've got 3 different factors here. One of them is, to me, the most glaring example is that we have an ADU construction sitting 6 inches from a 5-foot PG&E clearance, which is across the back of all the properties in Rancho Rinconada. It's across the back of mine. You cannot have a building that close to the PG&E clearance. In Los Angeles, their utility company requires 10 feet from any easement. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that I have seen any type of a structure, I'm going to throw it out there, the ADUs built next to or in a public utility easement. We need to have a study session on this. This is not going to fly. They could burn down the entire neighborhood. The Eichlers, knockoff Eichlers, they burn in 9 minutes. You cannot have any type of construction. 16 feet of ADU, 5 feet from the property line. Has anybody talked to PG&E? We have to have a discussion. We will have a discussion. I will begin calling senators tomorrow and escalate it to the governor. We cannot have ADUs that close to utility lines. The other one is, to me, The ADU law about the 4-foot setbacks was passed by the governor a year ago with 0 input. We have not had the citywide discussion on the 4-foot setbacks of the ADU. We've been dancing backwards in high heels, and we will have the discussion on this. The other one is the house is too large for the lot. It is a monster house. I'm sorry to bring that term up, but we need to have that discussion again. How did this happen? That lot would be required to have a 2250 house, and then you throw in the 500 square foot ADU. It is 25% larger than allowed. How is this happening? We will have discussions on this, I will guarantee you, because the neighborhood could be burned down in an instant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Next we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So, the appellant, I want to agree with most of what, or all probably, of what the appellant has stated, and more importantly, what she had written, because I think she wasn't able to cover everything she wanted to say. But I agree with all her points. Sadly, I think many of them there's no control over in part with the ADUs, the state law that allows this thing to be added to a lot with a normal sized house for the lot. It's just a big quagmire. And I think a respectful landowner who is purchasing property in neighborhoods and tearing down the existing house, which was most likely affordable, and putting something in that's not going to be affordable as a spec house, they need to, I wish there was a way you could wave your magic wand and make those particular people who are doing this to make money, and they have the ability to do it, so who can tell them not to, I guess, but have respect for those who are existing neighbors. And in many cases, these things don't show that any form of respect. Others do. I don't know if there was a conversation between the property owner and Sharon or any other neighbor to try to alleviate some of the worries, but I think there should be. And it just makes me super sad and disappointed that there can't be. So I understand Sharon's frustration about not having privacy on the side. First off, I want to mention that in the plan set, page A5 and A6, so this isn't the stamp set, because the stamp set was even worse. This was labeled as an amended set, and I don't know what the amendments were, but they don't show proper the labels on the elevations. And I've seen this before in plans that come through, and it doesn't get caught by the planner. I think it gets caught by the building department, I hope. But honestly, when all a person has to look at is a plan set, and they're trying to figure out, how is this property, this building, going to affect me? And the labels on the pages are incorrect. They have west elevation marked east, east marked west, north marked south, south marked north. So you don't know unless it's horrible. It's sloppy plan sets. And I just saw one 2 months ago, same situation. And I've seen them before. You have to give people the right information to look at. Whether that would help Sharon, I don't think so at this point, but it's important that those plans are correct. There's no excuse for it. So that being said, I know that the sill height on the second story windows are high enough where they're not required to have privacy planning. There's no, there isn't even a set that shows the view shed, because there isn't really a view shed when the windows are that high. Understood. That doesn't mean that smaller house on a slab, not a raised foundation with 10-foot ceilings and wall plates instead of on a slab.
Okay, finish up, Lisa. You're out of time.
Okay, it's just something needs to be done to promote friendly neighbors, even if those people aren't going to be living in the house.
Okay,
Even
thank
more
you, Lisa. I see the applicant here, but doesn't have their hand raised. Would the applicant, Caitlin Huang, would you like to speak? If so, I can unmute you. If not, you're not required to speak.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead. Who is this?
Hi, this is Jackson,
Okay.
the applicant. Sorry, I was just trying to find the raise my hand button. Hello, good evening, Planning Commission. I'm here trying to represent Mrs. Huang, which is the owner of this property. She might have a hard time expressing herself in English, but I think she will try to do it. Regarding this project, I know Mrs. Huang for a while. She have 2 kids. Her son actually go to Cupertino Sports Center for basketball, right? And they have two old parents in the house, so they actually need the space for them. So we're getting this a lot of comments saying this is a massive house. There's no backyard. If we were building a 1-story house, we would still be allowed to build 45% with the ADU, and that would leave them with literally no backyard at all with the ADU setback. And we're trying to do our best to to protect the privacy of the neighbors. I told her at the beginning, have your windows above 5 feet, above the 5 feet, so you don't encroach on your privacy of your neighbors, and do not build a balcony. We're compared to all the newly development around this neighborhood. Well, everybody seems to be building in balconies, lower window sills. We're really trying our best to protect the privacy of the neighbors. And she obviously needs a space to live in. I don't think this should be, denied for our project. And also we did leave a lot of setback on the 2nd floor and on the 1st floor. And I think this is it from my part.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go back to attendees and see. Let's see, we have one other person here, Laura. Laura, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura. I'm a resident in the Rancho community. I'm here to support the new house. First, I'm glad to know from planner AJ that this house follows all the required codes and permit requirements. Secondly, I'm glad to see the applicant is willing to make a lot of compromises to create better privacy for his neighbors. For myself, I'm the new resident coming to this nice neighborhood because it has nice schools for my kids, and my old parents love the nice neighbors who can speak their native languages here. So but my current house is only 800 something from like 50 years ago. So I totally understand for new citizens in Cupertino, like my family, we really want to have this kind of a new house to accommodate the whole family, including little kids and my older parents. I'm glad to see California and Cupertino has taken this ADU policy to make sure we have a comfortable space for everybody. And also, I know ADU is out of the discussion scope for today's meeting, but even for the main house, according to my research, all the new houses approved by the city of Cupertino in the past 20 years in this community, this house is among the average size. So I don't think the scale is beyond the average two-story houses, which is totally allowed in this neighborhood. So as a regular citizen and resident in this community, and the future, hopefully, big family who will live here happily for many years, I really support this new house, which will improve the whole community by its beautiful design and the decent design, and very practical to accommodate more families coming to our beautiful Cupertino. Thank you.
Okay, There's no more hands raised. Again, Caitlin, if you would like to speak, I'll unmute you, but you're not required to speak. Okay, so I don't see Caitlin unmuting herself, so. Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
welcome, Caitlin. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Yes. For this house, we spent like about 2 million to approve for the city plans. That's what our goals to live in a community like suit for our families. And since city approved our, we are just all the follow all the regulations for the city, and our family are get excited to have a new environment, and even for the nice neighborhood. For those, I mean, we are a young family. My kids only 10 years old, so that requires a lot of time, like in the future, like 10 years living with us. So we just planning like what the neighborhoods and what we can do the best for, we can afford it, and for a nice living, of course, for the beautiful communities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. So we will bring it back to, there's no more hands raised, so we'll bring it back to the Planning Commission. I had one concern. If you could put up the revised plan set.
Yeah, I can do that. Which page were you looking at?
The first page.
Okay.
So maybe this is nitpicking, but my concern is you're showing a house with forests and lakes around it, but not any of the surrounding houses and how small they are. And, you know, I know this is a legal house, but it does seem, I rode my bike over there this afternoon to look at it, and it does seem way out of scale for that side of Barnhart Avenue. It just seems enormously large based on this photo. And I just wonder why our photos are not, I mean, why are they showing lakes and forests instead of the surrounding houses when you do this? Can anyone answer that?
I can take a stab at it. Not that it may be satisfactory. The municipal code only requires a 3D rendering of the house itself. It doesn't necessarily require a rendering of what's around it. And as a result, this is it's something that applicants certainly nitpick with us about if asked to clarify this further.
Okay, so this is what's legally required. You don't have to actually show what it looks like in the neighborhood. I see. Okay, yeah, I'll go back to the Planning Commission and see what their comments are. Go ahead. Let's see who has their hand raised. Anybody? Sanjeev, go ahead. Sanju, go ahead. Or Sanjeev, sorry.
Yes. Actually, I'm hearing the third or the fourth. I don't remember. Last year we heard three probably, and this year the first one, and probably you will hear it in the future also. So privacy concerns are not. I agree with that, because the reason is that the second floor windows 5 feet from the floor does not protect you from looking in somebody's backyard and what they are doing, and there is a solution to it. And actually, I sometime back I talked to the city associate planner about having angled windows which faces towards the road rather than facing directly into somebody's backyard or the thing. And these are something very common in commercial buildings, and they can be easily. And the response I got was they cost more. is it not costing more to have this meeting, and this is amount of the time we are spending on this one and over and over again, and we are doing nothing about it? Because this is the fourth time I'm listening to this privacy concern. I'm sorry, I'm a little psyched up on this one. Second thing is that this is not 2271 square feet build area, and 560 square feet is not 2700. It is 2832, which is 56.6% covered area. You remove the ADU, maybe that is less. So effectively, it is a big house compared to. And I actually went this afternoon there, and all the houses which are bigger houses, they are either facing towards the road, excepting one or two exceptions. They are facing the cross section. Their windows are towards the cross section out there, or they are facing towards another double-story house. This house is sitting in a single story and neighbor is single story. Then both sides neighbor is single story, and few houses down the line are all single story. And I walked through the street around it. Some of the houses are double story here, but they are, in general, their windows are facing towards the road, not towards somebody's backyard or this thing. But that is something for the planner to figure this out. Second thing, maybe the privacy is covered under landscape requirements on the R1 zoning. I looked up the document on the web, and it is privacy is coming over and over again to the for review. We need to discuss this somehow separately, because this is not a settled thing. We just deny somebody's appeal and just go forward. Third thing is that if you have a utility pole next to it, I'm an engineer, and I know that the pole, if there is a sparking on the wires, which happens in my neighborhood so often. If your ADU is next to it 5 feet from there, how is that wooden structure is not going to catch a fire? Or if there is a storm, that particular pole is going to fall on that ADU, how is the people living in that ADU are not going to be hurt? So that is a valid point of utility. There are some solutions to it. You can ask PG&E to move the pole to 10 feet or whatever from the property, so that is not an issue. But to me, these two are the main. I would uphold the appeal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vikram, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Scharf. I got it right. Okay, so I had a few questions. First of all, are typically ADUs supposed to be added to existing homes, or can you build a new home with an ADU? Like, is there, like, I always thought the spirit of ADU was to add a second home which another family or people can live in the same lot on an existing home. So I wanted to get some clarification from the staff around that.
Yeah, many of the new ADU laws are intended for additions or conversions to existing homes, but they also apply for new construction as well.
Okay. And in this one, this is a connected ADU, right? So it actually is attached to the home? Okay.
No, it's not connected. It's attached. It's not permitted. You cannot have access from the main house into the attached ADU.
Okay.
You cannot put. You can't, and you can't build it and then later put in a door. You know, it has to be completely separate with a separate entrance.
Okay. The second thing, a question I had for folks was that you talked about the easements. So I heard some conflicting information that the ADU would be too close or would not be honoring the easements. Could you clarify that? Like, what exactly is the code and how far the ADU would be from the easement line and so on?
Yeah, so the ADU, again, which we're not reviewing the ADU with this application, we're just looking at the two-story home. But for this particular project, the ADU is set back 5'6", and there's a 5-foot utility easement on the rear property line. So the structure is not within the easement, but it is close to it.
Okay, and if we were independently evaluating the ADU as an extension or an expansion of the home, it would still be within all the codes required by law?
That's correct.
Okay.
No. If that was built as part of the house, it couldn't be because it doesn't meet the setback. It only meets the setback because it's an ADU.
Yes, exactly. So I guess if you just break it into two components, and if somebody built the house and they wanted to add an ADU, it would still be legal. The fact that it is happening together as part of a new construction is not impacting that. That's right. Okay, thank you. I think the next thing was that you had in the proposal, you had that the applicant should submit plans with grade levels. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, and what was that, and why was that in place?
Yeah, the original plans that were submitted had elevations measured from the finished grade rather than the natural grade. So we wanted to ensure that with the revised plans that were submitted, the existing natural grade is our basis of elevation. So the overall, I believe it's 26'2.5" is measured from existing natural grade rather than the proposed finished grade.
Okay, and what's the difference between the proposed grade and the natural grade? Do we know?
It is relatively small. It varies throughout the lot. The proposed grade is, I believe, to be about 190.52. The existing natural grade across the lot, it ranges from sorry, let me find the survey.
Okay, I think that's okay. We don't need to.
It's only, if I may, the Commissioner Sexton, I believe it's only like a few inches, maybe 2 or 3 inches. It's not awesome. by feet.
Okay, awesome. And will those extra inches make any difference in the validity of the design? That would they cross the height limit or something?
We don't think so. We just want to make sure that they do the right thing.
Okay, awesome. So it looks like there is no exception being made on any parts on the design or the approval of the home. It is compliant with all our ordinances and everything. Okay. The other question I had is, in the picture, it looks like there's a side porch on the house, like the house in the middle of lakes. That picture. Could you just show that design once more? Okay, so I'm just so the part which goes up from the driveway and enters, is that like a porch or is it actual construction? It's actual construction.
This here?
Right? Yeah.
It's a covered porch.
Covered porch, and then behind that is the actual home, right? Yeah.
Correct.
That would be the main entrance. The actual there's a portion of the actual home which is the window right where AJ's cursor is. That's where their living room is, I believe.
And the last thing I wanted to understand is that, commercial couple raised some questions about windows and where they face. Could you probably go back to the picture and highlight what he was talking about? And maybe Commissioner Kapil, you can also pitch in here. You're muted, I think.
Yeah. What I was talking about in the second, in the second level, you have those windows, right? They are basically straight windows. They are like, and they, I think what the R1 zoning requires is that they should be at least 5 feet from the floor. And if they are not, then you will have to provide some kind of shrubs on the side so that you can block the view or something like that.
Yeah.
So over here, what I noticed is that these windows, which are provided on the side, they are directly overlooking somebody's front and backyard. at this point. Now, 5 feet enough or not, that is, I'm not going to debate about it. But what I was pointing out that it is possible to, instead of creating in a straight window, you create an angled window, which basically allows the viewer behind that to view towards the road rather than looking towards, backyard of somebody's and the front yard of somebody. And that is actually, I'm not proposing something innovative thing here. This is in general, if you notice in commercial buildings and Google it, you will find that many buildings have that kind of a provision where it is at 30 degrees angled glass, where the viewer can only see towards the right angle to that particular window, which basically goes to the road. And that is one. Second thing I noted in this property, even if you provide those shrubs, right, the shrub name which is mentioned here, I actually went on the Wikipedia and searched its name. Its typical height is somewhere around 7 feet to 10 feet at that point. And we are talking about a building of 26 feet high. Mm-hmm. Okay, so even if you take the lower portion of that window, that 5 feet here, that shrub is not going to cover what the shrub mentioned in this plan. And I have the name for that also. It is, the point is that Laura nobilis, that is what it is called. Mm-hmm. And if you go and search for it, it is typically somewhere between 7 to 10 feet at the most. Okay. So I have no clue that how this shrub on the boundary is going to protect any view or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And third thing is, these are when autumn comes, there are no leaves, and when storm comes, these things fall on your drainage system or your guardrails. It will block your plumbing, whatever. So there are a couple of issues out there. So that is related to privacy, I would say.
Okay. For the staff, do we have by default, are we required to have these screening plantation for every second-story home or two-story homes?
If they don't meet the either 5-foot sill height or some other type of screening requirements, then they are required to plant privacy screenings in the view shed from any second-story window or balcony.
Okay, but I guess but as Commissioner Couple said, that even once those plants grow to the height, they're not really going to screen the view from the second floor, right? Is that correct? Because if the window is 5 feet above on the second floor, we're talking about 15 or 18 feet above grade or something like that. And a 10-foot tree is not exactly going to shield anything.
If I may, Commissioner Saxena, a Laurel nobilis grows to between 15 to 20 feet in height. The whole purpose of planting these shrubs is to provide reasonable screening within 3 years of planting. When they are planted, we require that they're planted at a minimum height of 6 feet. Okay. The only place where they are required to plant these is currently in the backyard. The rest of the windows all exceed the 5-foot sill height limitation that the city has in its code.
Okay. It is not, I need to correct that because I'm referring to Wikipedia, and I believe that more than other things. But the point is that 17 to 18, 20 feet, whatever you're talking, is the maximum height. Average height, if you look at it, it is around 8 to 10 feet, most of them. So that's what they say that. Now, if the city has to permit, they should mention the height there. Not just saying a Laura's, whatever that name of the plant is. That's my comment on it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So just to summarize, I think the house by itself is compliant with all the regulations we have, although many of us, we are surprised that our regulations approve that, including building that big ADU, which is almost 1/3 of the square footage of that. But that's my understanding from what the staff has told me. All right.
Okay. So yes, everything's compliant. The only, I guess, somewhat subjective standard here is it harmonious? You can correct me, Pew, if I'm wrong. Harmonious in scale and design with the general neighborhood. Is that something we can consider?
So I'm going to be very cautious about the words that I use here. Otherwise, I'm going to be reprimanded by Michael here. But in general, this neighborhood is a neighborhood in transition. There are many two-story homes. There are many large two-story homes. There are many small two-story homes. But in general, they all comply with the city's FAR. In fact, all the homes that we see right now come in with an FAR of 44.9%. We do not see any homes that come in at 35, 25, any of those other percentages. Everybody maxes it out, and as has this applicant. So from that perspective, I don't believe, according to the Housing Accountability Act 2, because this is 2 units that are being proposed, one of which we cannot, we cannot consider tonight because it's a ministerial unit. Yeah. We cannot reduce the density of the units, which includes the size of we allow 45%. That's what we got to allow. So from that perspective, there is precious little that we can do about the size of the unit itself. If the commission wishes to consider, is it, do you want to lower the height by maybe something, or, something that's not, totally egregious in terms of reducing the size of the unit, that is something that the commission could potentially consider. And Michael, please correct me if I'm wrong about any of what I've said right now.
No, I think Pew has correctly articulated the requirements under the Housing Accountability Act. This is a project that objectively fits within all of our objective standards and requirements. So, therefore, if you are not going to be able to decrease the size of this project unless you make some very specific findings, and it's very and those findings are read to you. You would have to, this commission have to find that you reduce the size of this project. You have to make that this project has a specific adverse impact upon the public health or safety, unless the project is disapproved or approved by the condition the project developed at a lower density. And a specific adverse impact means a significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable impact based on objective written public health or safety standards. So, and that's the requirement because it does objectively meet all of our standards.
Right. Yeah, the only thing that I thought we had any leeway on was this, does it fit in with the general neighborhood? And going there today and seeing the surrounding houses, I would say it does not fit in scale and design. But you're saying that standard of the city is not something that would be wise to consider.
Well, yes. Again, I mean, Michael is right that is not something that, maybe design features might be something that the commission could consider. The other thing the commission could consider is, like I mentioned, maybe lowering the height 6 inches, a foot. These are 10-foot plates on both the first and the second floor. So there's certain design things potentially the commission could consider, but in terms of the square footage, they meet it.
No, I'm not, but it doesn't exceed our height limit either, right? It's under.
Correct.
The height limit there is 28 feet or 30 feet or what?
Correct, but that does not necessarily reduce the density of the structure.
So just to understand, right now when you say plates are 10 feet, that means the roof height is about 9.5 to almost 10 feet.
From floor to ceiling, the roof is. I'm sorry. From floor to ceiling, the measurement is 10 feet.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So it's a fairly, and that is something which we can recommend lowering.
Michael?
Yeah, I believe that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Actually, Commissioner Kappel, what are your thoughts? Because to me, I think that looks like a reasonable compromise.
I still don't understand how safety criteria is met. For if you have a next to ADU 5 feet away, a PG&E pole for a distribution of wire. I have seen in my neighborhood many times PG&E truck standing when a big storm hits, and the wires have have fallen on the ground, and nobody's. So this is not something happens once in 10 years. It happens every year or maybe every second year, something like that. And if ADU is 5 feet away from that PG, how is that not safety concern? I just don't get it.
It doesn't matter if it's a safety concern. The ADU law is clear.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned that they can relocate the pole so it is not right adjacent to the ADU also. I think that's something which was discussed earlier.
And second thing is privacy-wise. According to the law, there is no restriction on the big windows on the first floor, right? They are extending over the fence. I saw that here. So, it is only for the second level you have this 5 feet criteria over the floor. On the first floor, those are the maximum fence is 6 feet or something, which is otherwise you have to take a permit from the city. And these windows are much. So there are a lot of things is not covered in this particular R1 single family rule set. To me, it looks like I can't deny this appeal. It needs discussion about the privacy specifically. Privacy is not even called out in the R1 zoning. This is under the landscape. Privacy is not a landscape thing. So I don't know how you can deny such an appeal where from the second story, from the first floor, both places you are violating the neighbor's privacy, and the law doesn't say anything.
So yeah, Michael, can you comment on that? It doesn't sound like privacy is something that we are even allowed to consider.
At this point, I believe that it is required for the rear, and the applicant has proposed some trees.
Right, but for the sides.
For the sides, I like to defer to the staff whether there's things that they can do in terms of a design to mitigate privacy further, but they have complied with our ordinance requirements.
So, I mean, a couple of things that I will say. One is the ADU is not under consideration with this. Right. I just want to make that clear. That is not up for debate at this meeting, because state law preempts us from doing anything related to it. In terms of privacy protection, if the commission wishes to, again, these windows are about 5 feet 2 inch in sill height. That is a clear requirement of our municipal code. If the commission does wish to have those windows be, obscure glass or something like that, maybe that is something that the commission could consider. But again, they do meet the code as it is written right now. If the applicant doesn't like the commission's, additional conditions, let's say, they do still continue to have the ability to appeal the planning commission's decision tonight.
I have one more thing for you. Why in the first picture where you were showing the yellow portions, will it not be a good idea to mention the sizes of those lots? Because at this point, you may consider 561 square feet of ADU is not the problem, but total covered area of this particular development is 56.6%. It is, and you can remove, for the sake of formality, you can remove 561 and say that we are meeting some standard here. But whereas the other houses which I saw, they were far bigger. I went there and I saw that, and they were facing towards the roads wherever there was a 2-story. So will it make sense to show the area of those lots where we are showing yellow stuff on your picture, that these are the double-story ones, and how bigger their lots are compared to to this particular development? That would also make a lot of sense to see that how this development is out of proportions compared to the remaining ones. Yeah, that's just one other comment, because that information would be useful for people to review and see that what we are talking about here.
Chair Sharf,
Okay.
if I may, again,
Yeah, go ahead.
just to clarify, the project does meet the FAR for this development, and state law preempts us from including the FAR of the ADU for purposes of calculation.
Okay. So it seems like our rule about harmonious and scale and design kind of conflicts with the state law. Is that an accurate statement?
Not state law, right? It is based on what we have written the ordinance.
Right, but I'm being told, oh, that whole thing about it being harmonious with the neighborhood is not something we can consider anymore.
You can, again, but just to clarify, if I may, Chair Sharf, you can look at architectural details. You can certainly say, again, I'm just throwing things, pulling things out of thin air right now, but you could certainly say the whole house has to be made of siding. That's a design feature that doesn't necessarily reduce the density of the proposed project. You could say, oh, the house needs to be painted pink. There's certain things that you could say, that do not affect the density of the proposed development. But that, if that's what it takes to make the structure be more compatible and harmonious, that is something that the commission could consider.
Okay, so just to call out the degree of freedoms we have, that we don't really have a basis for denying this waiver on the basis of ordinance. It's compliant, but we do probably have flexibility in changing certain parameters, right? And those parameters include height, the what do you call it, the facade, and those things.
I believe the assistant city attorney has something to add.
So that's correct, Commissioner Saxena. It's certain things with the facade you can condition your approval on, but in terms of height, I want to caution you that density is construed as the square footage of the facility and of the development, and Pew suggested maybe reducing the ceiling height down 6 inches, and that seems to not interfere with the living space. But the problem with reducing density is then you're changing, you're reducing the size and changing the density. So getting back to Chair Sharp's point, though, we start with what does the code allow, and at this point, under the code, the size of this development is consistent and it complies with code. And so once you have that, the second inquiry is if that meets objective standards, then under state law, you can't reject because of the size of the density.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I think,
and no one is suggesting that, but I'm reading our code now, and the project is consistent with the Cupertino general plan, applicable specific plans, ordinances, blah, blah, blah. And then numbers 3 and 4. Number 3, the proposed project is harmonious in scale and design with the general neighborhood.
Yeah.
And number 4, adverse visual impacts on adjoining properties have been reasonably mitigated.
Yeah, I think it's a third and fourth part where there's an element of subjectivity. And I personally would be very comfortable proposing a reduced height, because 10 feet is much taller than most older homes. Like I know the home I live in is just under 8 feet. Many newer homes are up to 9 feet. So 10 feet is in some way stretching it, and it is sort of making it really stand out above, especially that because it's a 2-story home. So that's something I would be very supportive of. I don't know what the other commissioners feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was over there in that neighborhood today, and I see some, nice 2-story homes that, are next to 1-story homes, but they're not out of scale with the other ones. But this one, is very out of scale, and I guess that it is because of the 10-foot height on the inside. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, most, in my neighborhood, each floor has 8-foot ceilings, maximum on 2-story houses. So I'm just wondering, can we reduce the height of each floor, each story to 8 feet?
I would have a request for the staff. that what's the typical height for newer construction? Like, is it?
Thank you for asking that question. I was gonna say something, but I wanted you to ask that question. Typically, we do see 10 feet on the first floor more and more these days. We used to see 9 feet. It has slowly over the years that I've been in Cupertino crept up to 10. On the second floor, we are more and more seeing 10 feet heights. But typically we do see 9 or 9'6" on the second floor. But that's what we see. And I did want to add, we have approved a lot of permits last year, and the year before we approved 34 in 2020 and 33 in 2021. So, and we haven't seen any 8-foot.
Yeah, I think 8 foot is probably last century is what I would say. But I think if we go to 9'9", we still reduce the height by 2 feet, which is about 10%, and which will have a visual impact on the rest of the neighborhood. So I would personally be okay with 9 feet because it is still a more modern style without, making it really stand out. So 9 feet on each level. So that would reduce the overall height by 2 feet.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would be supportive of that. I'm not sure how we do that here. Michael, so what would we have to do in order to, grant the approval, but at a lower height?
I think you would move to deny the appeal on the condition that the applicant reduce the height limits per your recommendation.
Yeah, and that is consistent with the third and fourth clauses about making it more harmonious with the neighborhood and also the other concerns we have. Okay. Yeah, I think that would work for me.
All right, why don't you make that motion, Commissioner?
Okay. So I know we had 3 different things. I need to probably bring it up on my screen. So give me a minute. Or if you could just, AJ, if you could just share the 3 things which we are proposing, the motion.
Sure, give me 1 second.
Sure.
If I can interrupt, Commissioner Saxena, can we make clear? Because again, we're not discussing the ADU because that's not the subject.
Right, we're not allowed.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Okay.
I think the staff report had like a set of proposals which we were supposed to vote on.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think it was the last slide of your thing.
So Commissioner Saxena, you just want the recommendation slide shared?
Yeah. The one which we're going to vote on the motion, right?
AJ, it would be the recommendation slide from the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Because we'll have to draft a new motion, and that should cover all those things and the restrictions.
And I would suggest that you put the height of those trees in the as a restriction. You said 16 to 20 feet. You should put that in writing in your proposal that is the height which you will put it in there rather than something else, which is
okay.
If I may, Commissioner Saxena, Chair, through the chair, it would be almost impossible to find trees that are already 20 feet in height to be planted over there. So I did want to clarify that.
So Commissioner Kapil, I think probably you want to recommend that at least they're like 6 or 8 feet when they're planted, and of a species which will grow up to like 16 feet or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you are providing that as a privacy criteria, right? So you have to meet that. If it is part of the thing, then how can you say that we will provide 6 and 8 feet tree and it will grow in 2 years to something like 16 or 20 feet or whatever, right? So it is after 2 years we will meet your goal of privacy. If you, it's equivalent to saying that, right? I mean, or you consider providing angled windows or colored glasses or what, some method which will meet your objective of providing the alternate to the shrubs.
But by the way, Commissioner Kapil, I think even that would be only on the backyard, not on the side yard, which I think was a bigger concern.
Yeah, I mean, backyard, because there is on the backside of that, the south elevation, if you look at it, there are windows too. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that it's only on the side. It is also on the backside view. So backside view is looking at somebody else's house.
Okay, so I think the way, let's do it this way. I will read out the motion. I'll add the height amendment, and you can add the tree height. I'll add the house, the plate height amendment, and you can add the tree height amendment. Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
so I think the new motion is that the Planning Commission adopts the proposed resolution to find the action exempt from CEQA. We deny the appeal and uphold the director's decision approving R 2021-56. Require the applicant to reduce the height of the plate height to a maximum of 9 feet at both the floors, for both the floors. Commissioner Kapil, do you want to add your amendment?
Yeah, I would say that to mitigate is it called south elevation? I don't know which elevation is that. So on the south elevation, to mitigate
the rear.
The rear is the south.
Yeah.
To mitigate the south elevation privacy, the shrub's height has to be equivalent to the height of the floor height of the second floor, at least. So that is 9 feet less than 26, which will be at least 17 feet from the ground.
If I may, through the chair, sir, it would be almost impossible to find shrubs that are that tall to be planted. I'm just cautioning that as practical advice.
Yeah, I think it's not that. I think, Commissioner Kapil, there has to be the final growth height. What we can probably recommend is thus the minimum height when they're planted. Yeah,
so the minimum height, I mean, what we are not making a compromise over the standard, right? Standard says that if you are overlooking somebody's, you have a privacy concern, you have to plant a shrub to mitigate it. If
but it can take up to 3 years to grow to that height.
Yeah, so then alternatively they provide a colored glass or something, or angled windows. That is the other I mean, you're not going to wait for 3 years for this to grow to 17 feet that it provides the adequate privacy, right? So if I read the law exactly, I can read that. I have it in front of me, and that basically says that that the shrubs have to be provided under the landscaping rule, R1, the R1 zoning rule. So let me see if I can. So that basically means that when we are planting something, we are mitigating that effect. We're not waiting for 3 years for that to be mitigated.
Yeah, I mean, if they can find another way to mitigate it temporarily until those grow, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. Oh, you'll have no privacy for 3 years, and
yeah, exactly,
and then you'll have it. I mean, it doesn't seem right.
So it is a 19.28.120 landscape requirement, which basically specifies this, that the shrubs have to be
and the other option could be that they actually increase the height of the window to be like whatever 5 or 6 feet has to be, right? That's the other option.
Yeah,
that is not an option, if I may, because those are egress windows per the building code, and so they have to have a certain sill height in order to meet fire and safety requirements.
And that sill height is lower than the.
Yes, that sill height, I believe, is 3 feet 6 inches or something like that, in order for safety reasons.
So. Okay. So
So
maybe
in the
you
law,
could,
it says that windows with a permanent exterior lowers to a height of 5 feet above the second floor. That is, I'm reading from the landscape requirement.
Correct, but the
19.1.
building code sometimes does trump that.
So, PO, if I would suggest, would you recommend some wording here which would capture the essence of what Commissioner Kapil is saying, and it makes
You know,
sense from your point of view?
There are a couple of things that I will say. That landscape easement is about 5 feet wide. It's not a landscape easement, but the PG&E easement is about 5 feet wide. Planting a tree over there doesn't necessarily help. We require trees to be about, I believe it's 8 feet tall when planted, so that doesn't necessarily help. But we could certainly require that the shrubs that be planted be about 8 feet tall. They are very, very hard to find, even at 8 feet tall. So we have to allow some, be practical about what gets required in terms of planting. So shrubs do grow faster. If you want a faster growing shrub, there is the pittosporum, which does grow faster. It becomes like a nice hedge pretty fast. But it is not practical to require that the shrubs be planted and that screening be immediate. The planning department's since these privacy requirements went in, which was in 1999. The requirement has been that the expectation is that within 3 years they will provide partial screening, and so that is what the standard has been. I mean, I would be loath to have something very specific for this one particular applicant when we have 34 and 58 others that we've approved without this particular requirement. And the appellant is also on the side, not necessarily at the rear. I just wanted to make that point as well.
So how many of the other 34 are right next to a house that's, maybe 15 feet high?
I wouldn't say a small number. I mean, a lot of our homes that we see are in the Rancho neighborhood as well. I mean, again, I don't have the statistics to rattle that off, but we do see a lot of homes being replaced in Rancho, which are right next to the flat top homes, 800 square foot flat top homes in Rancho.
Okay, so how is this coming with the resolution? I need to click on that. Okay. So it sounds like, revising the planting height to a minimum of 17 feet is not practical.
No, I would suggest maybe
8 feet.
8 feet, but even that, it's really hard to find bushes. But then again, like I said, maybe the commission could consider having them change it to a pittosporum rather than the bay laurel is a slower growing tree for sure, but the pittosporum is a fast growing shrub.
Well, yeah, we're not telling them what.
Well, right now the plans call out the bay laurel. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so you could change that to be a pittosporum, which grows pretty fast to be a pretty tall height. I mean, or the Italian cypress, which isn't the best choice in my opinion, but that's.
What is the one called that you're?
Pittosporum.
Okay. How do you spell that?
Ooh, good question. Pitt. Pitt. Osporum.
Okay. Well.
Tenuifolium. Terrible with biological names.
So who is typing this recommendation now? Is this?
It's AJ. AJ has the keyboard.
Okay, AJ has the keyboard. Okay. So my fellow commissioners, I mean, what do you want to do here? It's fine with me to specify that other faster growing shrub.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think that would be right.
AJ, why don't you put that in? And Pew can spell that for you again if necessary.
To provide to replace the To replace, I mean, maybe if I suggest something, replace the rear privacy plantings with Pittosporum tenuifolium. Tenui, so TENUI, yeah. And we can fix the spelling at some point, but the rear privacy planting shrubs to be, yeah. Take the word A out, AJ. Thank you. And just so we can be clear, Chair Scharf, if I may suggest that for the plate height, maybe we say on the principal residence, so we're not confused with the ADU, since that's not part of this.
Okay. Is there a height limit on the ADUs, or I mean?
It is the state law says it's this. If it's an attached ADU, it's the height of the principal structure, because it limits it to single-story structures. I believe
Right.
Closer to 20 feet or whatever the standard is for it to be considered a single story.
Oh, so do we actually have to put that in there if it's already assumed to be the same height as the principal structure?
Well, I mean, it's whatever is allowed by code for the principal structure, not necessarily whatever the principal structure is built to.
Ah, okay. So you're saying that we could set a maximum of 9 feet for the principal structure for each floor, but they could still go to a higher height for the ADU.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, then yeah, go ahead and do that.
Would the commission like any other edits to the motion?
Or, I mean, up to the owner of this property can choose to replace the glasses type if it chooses to mitigate it in a different way. I mean, as per the law, you have to provide the shrubs, but if the shrub is not providing the adequate privacy, which is the intent of that particular law, then the owner can replace the glasses to different variety and mitigate it.
Yeah, that's true, but I don't know if we want to get into that level of detail here. I don't know if you can hear me. But they could always come back with that proposal if that's, if they had an interest in doing that. Yeah, I kind of think we've beaten this to death already. Okay, so let's see. Are we ready here?
I guess based on, I mean.
Okay. Okay, so I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission adopt the proposed draft resolutions to find that the proposed actions are exempt from CEQA, to deny the appeal and uphold the director's decision approving R-2021-056, to require the applicant to reduce the plate height of the principal structure to a maximum of 9 feet on each floor, to replace the rear privacy planting shrubs to be Pittosporum tenuifolium. I guess not sure I got that right. Require the applicant provides the existing natural grade for all height measurements, including building envelope, overall height, etc. on all, and I can't see the below that on the slide. So AJ, if you can move that. On all building permit plans as a condition of approval. Is there anything below that? I can't scroll down.
No, that's all.
Okay, so that's my motion. Is there a second? Please. Would anyone like to second that?
I second.
Okay, let's vote.
Commissioner Kapil,
Yeah, I will go with it.
Commissioner Sexton. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, provided those conditions which are mentioned are adhered to.
Yeah, that's a part of the resolution. So that's what.
Yes, okay.
Commissioner
you-
Sexton,
Yes.
Commissioner Wong, Vice Chair Matipatla, Chair Sharp.
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0-2.
I have
Okay.
a question. What is the procedure for making this ordinance amendments? Because this is coming fourth, fifth time, and we are hearing over and over again the same thing from various different parties, right? So somebody has to take a step forward and modify that ordinance to incorporate some of these issues which are there, right? So what is the procedure for that?
Right. I mean, the city council would have to, decide to do that. And it's true. The other one they have to consider is doing something about the balcony ordinance. So that would have to be put on their work plan. I'm not sure what role the planning commission has in that other than to review what they come up with. But yeah, this is not agendized, so we really can't go into it too much here.
Mhm.
So it is 9:26 now. Why don't we take a break until 9:31 and then come back and do the last item?
I have a 9:45 hard stop, so I'll have
Okay,
to
then, yeah, if everyone's
Let's
okay,
continue.
we can
Let's
just keep
continue,
going.
yeah.
The last item won't take very long. So let's go to item 4, the 2021 General Plan Housing Element Annual Progress Report. So let's have the staff report.
Absolutely. It'll be my pleasure to introduce Carrie Husler, our housing manager, who fastidiously takes this through to see it to its bitter end. So, Carrie.
Good evening, Chair Scharf and Commissioners. I am closing all the other items on my screen so I can load the quick presentation for you. Just as I'm doing that, I can let you know that this housing report is an annual report, and it was submitted to HCD, the California State Department of Housing and Community Development, on March 7th, ahead of the April 1st deadline. It went to City Council on March 15th. We're here before you this evening, and it will also go to Housing Commission on April 14th as an informational item. So I apologize for the delay. I'm going to screen share. I have everything here. I'm just having a slowdown. Okay. Please let me know, Chair Scharf, if you can see the screen.
Yes.
Great.
But
Okay.
if you can maximize it for, presentation mode instead of,
Yes, that's where it's.
there we go. Okay.
Okay, give me one moment. That is where I'm having a little bit of trouble. It's taking over both of my screens from the beginning. Let me give it a try so I understand.
I think I think we
Okay.
can see it. It's all right.
Very much. So as I mentioned, this item was submitted to HCD, and we are in compliance with this report for the year of 2021. And I wanted to give you a quick overview of the 2021 General Plan Annual Housing Element Progress Report. So we call this the HCD APR. Everything in housing is a lot of acronyms. So what we've done is we've summed this up for you and for the public, and we've put this information on our website. Here is an overview of the city's RHNA entitlements for 2014 to 2021. In 3 of the 4 categories, the city has far exceeded our RHNA obligations. We have entitled and produced 417 total units as counted towards our annual housing element progress report, which is the RHNA production. The city has entitled 3,190 units, which have not yet been produced. The only thing that is yet to be fully entitled is moderate income. I would like to point out that many of the moderate units are ADUs, which we expect to continue to see production of ADUs towards the balance of 67 units. So this information lives on the city's housing documents website and was updated to be in sync with this report that I'm reading to you. And then next, I'll show you the RHNA generation by developers for 2014-2021. For purposes of the annual housing element report, they require that we report only building permits issued. In the last 8 years, developers have applied for and been issued the following building permits. Overall, in 2021, the city issued 41 building permits, of which we have 41 ADUs.
So this is a little hard to see. I don't know if you can.
I'm so sorry about
figure
that.
out how to
Carrie,
do
you
this.
can use that slider at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, there you
Okay,
go.
yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
much better. Thank you.
I apologize. Would you like me to go back and let you see this one? My computer froze, but I was able to keep going.
No, it's all right.
Okay. So I'll go to the RHNA generation by developers. So you see there's quite a lot of housing that remains to be built. And what we're talking about here is the information that feeds our last housing element. This is everything for housing elements that we're working on now is future. So these are our current numbers and our current progress. And I'm happy to answer questions. It's really just an opportunity to show
I'm
the
going to go.
numbers.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go let the one member of the public has their hand raised. So, yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you, staff, for the good presentation. I was there when this was, I think, went to the Housing Commission, and I think it's going to City Council again. I will tell you right now that I am appalled at the HCD, MTC, ABAG. I have never seen so much drama in the last 20 years. This cycle is a joke. I mean, our staff is fantastic. The things that have been come out of Sacramento to abuse the people of these cities. I have requested a study session on ADUs in danger fire areas and PG&E utilities. This is what we are up against. The idiots running this state have no idea what the people of this state want. Now, okay, this is great. We have to have a report and do our little tables and graphs to keep up with whatever faldy-roll that HCD wants. Okay, that's great. Okay, that's fine. We already know the RHNA numbers are a complete joke for this cycle, but therefore we have to prance to the music from whatever ludicrous group is running, and it's YIMBY is running HCD right now. I will start that. But if the public is having to ask for study sessions to deal with danger areas like ADUs being stuck in PG&E clearances, then there is a problem in Sacramento. But yes, getting back to this, we have to turn our numbers and graphs and charts, as David Letterman used to call it on the Tonight Show. We have to turn them in to Sacramento, to HCD. HCD is abusing cities. They're abusing the public. They're being run by YIMBY. So yes, we have to turn our little graphs and charts in, and that's wonderful. But I have zero confidence in the way this state is run, and there is nothing made to make sure that the public is safe. We have transgressions, SB 9, SB 10, the RHNA numbers. I have never in my life seen such an abuse of the public, local control being threatened in our neighborhoods. Why? Okay, so racial stuff. Did they go after my parents a generation ago? Yeah, it's all out war. I think that this cycle is going to go down in the books as one of the worst cycles. I have never seen anything like this in Cupertino in 20 years. And
10
people
seconds.
can joke about it, but it is a big, big, big problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So I guess all we really have to do is agree to accept this report. Is that true? Yeah, we don't really do anything here.
It's a numbers game. There is
Yeah.
no acceptance of the report. I mean,
Right.
agreeing part, but
we
it's
received
just,
it. Okay.
correct.
And I would point out, I know, we get attacked a lot in Cupertino, but we have entitled far more units in our arena than required. We have not denied any permits that were legitimately requested. And, the problem we always have, and will continue to have, is a builder or a developer that asks for an entitlement and then doesn't use it for whatever reason. And that's something that, hopefully will change in the future if conditions change and they decide that it's profitable to build. And I guess we can leave it at that. Does any of the other commissioners have any comments on this? I don't see any hands raised. So let me go back to the agenda if I can find it. Why do I keep losing my agenda here? Cancel. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, and there's no old business, no new business. How about staff and commission reports? Any staff reports?
No, sir, no staff reports.
Okay, so now we are on to commission reports. So I'm almost out of time. We're going to lose one of our commissioners, but I did want to give a brief report. I went to the Planning Commissioner Academy this past week in San Ramon. It was really good. I was surprised. Having been on city council before, I thought I would know everything, but I didn't know everything. There was, quite a bit I learned. The state auditor report came out the second day, and that was quite a bit of discussion. The SB9 session was very good. And it was basically, they said, SB9 has its negatives. It will increase housing costs. But really, they said only 5.4% of single family homes would even be eligible for it. And of that 5.4%, only a tiny fraction of those owners would take advantage of SB9. We were mentioned actually in the report, but in the SB9 presentation, and it was a little funny because they mentioned Woodside and their effort to make their whole city exempt from SB9 due to mountain lions. But then they mentioned Cupertino and our ordinance that prevents buildings from shading neighboring buildings on solar installations. And, being there from Cupertino, I got quite a bit of feedback from other planning commissioners and city attorneys there that, hey, that was a really good idea. We're going to try to do something similar. They had not thought of that. And so, yeah, we may have been on that slide to insult us, but it actually came out the other way. And other cities were impressed with what our staff and council had done. And there was a session on legislative update. There's a lot of bills coming and that are going to be very bad for cities, especially ones regarding impact fees that we have to watch. They're coming after the impact fees because that's a significant expense for developers to pay those impact fees. So, need to watch out for that. There's some moderately bad bills. There's one that would allow ADUs to be 25 feet high instead of the same height as the main building. So we don't know if that's going to go through. And some good bills, like a reintroduction of Jim Bell's bill that would provide $2 billion a year for affordable housing, which the governor vetoed a few years ago. So maybe I'll put something on the agenda that goes into further detail. I could go on for an hour on this, but I won't since it's not agendized. Do we have any other commissioners that wish to give any commission reports?
Yeah, I also attended that Planning Commission Academy, and SB 9, SB 35, and SB 10 were discussed quite a bit, and it was SB 9 especially was very clear in terms of articulation of what it conforms and how it will increase the housing density. But I heard, as you said, I heard the comments that it is only 5% effective in terms of meeting the goals. It's not very effective, as that's what came out. Other than that, I think CEQA sessions were very good. They were CEQA and advanced CEQA. And although it was very specialized, there's a CEQA has to be approved separately and the project can be approved separately. But most of the time I recall that we see this over here in Planning Commission, CEQA report and the other project all in one piece.
That's a very good point. Yeah, apparently we're not doing it the way we should be.
Right. And other than that, I think they said that state has a lot of money, I mean, surplus money available, and I was just wondering that why that money is not used in the places like where we have such a housing crunch and all that. But there was a good finance session where they kind of told that how the property taxes are distributed in the city infrastructure, and to give you insight that as to how where the maximum chunk of the money goes in terms of spending. And Cupertino was mentioned a couple of times. One was, as Chair Shah said, about the solar panel shadow because of the neighbor, and the other times a planning commissioner from San Jose also mentioned about Cupertino, not in a good sense. So there were quite a few remarks which are not very pleasant about the Cupertino. That's what there was a lot of things, a lot of good stuff was there, but it probably needs, as you said, needs another session to go in detail.
Right. And I was all ready to jump up and respond to the San Jose Planning Commissioner because he was presenting some misinformation, but I thought better of it and decided it was better just to ignore it and move on. That was not the time or the place to correct someone.
And one thing I noted that everybody is aware, all the planning commissioners, whomsoever I network there, one thing they are aware is Valco. They are aware of all the things related to Valco and how the CEQA mitigation can be done there and whatnot. So that was fairly surprising to me, but that was a fact.
Yeah, they were at the tables I was sitting at. Valco did come up, I think, because it's the major SB 35 project, and everyone is wondering what's happening with it and what's happening with the cleanup of the site. And yeah, just told them, well, they're trying to clean it up, and we'll see what eventually happens there. And yeah, that's it. Anything from you, Vikram?
Nothing from my side.
Okay, great. So anything that anyone wants to put on a future agenda that we should talk about here? Because I set the agenda with the staff in a week before the meeting. Okay, very good. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Good night.